right, what do you want to talk about first?
Oh, let's go blacktail deer. How's your it's the 23rd of August now, so we're 3 weeks into the season. How'd yours shape up?
Well, I had August 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. I was working, but that kind of worked out because it was foggy, rainy, and gross up here. So I avoided the bad weather, and then my weekend was the 4th, 5th, and 6th. And I kind of had to play weather weird. It was because it had been so hot and dry in July. I had anticipated having to hike a big tall mountain that had some rock and some snow on it, and maybe camp overnight. But then the weather on the 31st, first, and I guess it really rolled in on the first. It just clouded up and socked in. That kind of changed things because I figured that maybe deer would kind of come back out into the open or move back into the bigger alpine areas. And then, I kind of changed up, called an audible, and decided to go up the morning of a smaller mountain. And then it got hot and sunny right away on the 4th too. So I, my game plan didn't quite work out. I thought there would be more deer out and about because I didn't think it was going to get as hot and sunny as it did. And we only saw one buck, which we were able to get. But as soon as we shot that deer at, I want to say 6:15 in the morning, by the time we took a couple pictures and gutted it and slid it over into the shade, we hiked around a little bit more and we never saw another deer on the entire mountain.
Yeah, yeah, that's
It
happened a
was,
couple times where it's so hot that you're excited that you don't have to deal with the rain, but you know that window in the morning is going to be very, very short. And I think that happened last year when I went out with my wife. I went on the caribou hunt to start off, and so I didn't start hunting deer down here until the 10th or something like that when I got back. But it was so hot that as soon as the sun starts to come up, like it's over. Like they're already headed back into the brush and it's so hard to, if you can get the weather window or catch the weather break. So that first day after it's raining when they're out and it pops, or the first time it's kind of cool, but man, it's too much sun can be a good thing. Like too much rain is annoying, but also too much sun and too much heat.
yeah. And at least on those rainy kind of foggy days, deer will be moving throughout the day. So, maybe the visibility is not very good for a while, but you can kind of sit and wait it out maybe, and some clouds roll through and you get openings of visibility and maybe see a deer. But when it's hot and sunny, as soon as it's over, it's over.
Yeah. What do you do during those? Actually, I'll ask you about both. What do you do during those sunny days? And what do you do during the foggy days? Do you sit and wait or do you move?
Well, so the sunny days, ideally, if I know it's going to be sunny and hot, what I'll do is I'll pick a mountain that is got some rocky, like north facing aspect stuff that the deer might be hanging out on all day. Because it's cooler, there's a breeze, they can get away from the bugs, and then I can catch them out in that open spot in a longer window of time. So I'll be able to have it's a bigger mountain, but I'll be able to hike it in the afternoon, get up high, drop camp stuff, and then do a little hunting in the evening, maybe either catch one up high or then be in the alpine right at 4 a.m. or whenever the sun ends up coming up and be able to hunt that little window. I gambled on that and I didn't do that this time because I thought that fog and rain was going to hang on a little more. But yeah, the hot sunny days, I try to hunt a really big mountain and avoid kind of the shorter, maybe more lower alpine that has timber mixed in with it, just because it seems like they'll just filter right off the tops and they'll be gone.
Yeah,
Immediately.
I shot my first 4 point on, just like you were saying. It was a rocky shoot that was north facing, and it was about noon, like high noon on a day that was in the 70s. But just like you said, it was cooler. It was a big mountain, so there was a lot of space. But all he did was just drop down into the chute And the temptation when it's sunny out is you can see so much, you just want to keep going down the ridge, keep going, keep going, keep going. You can wear yourself out by the time the evening comes. And sometimes that evening can be really good because if it does start to cool, it's not really the last, I don't know, hour and a half, 2 hours. It could be like the last 15 or 30 minutes. But yeah, it can be hard on those sunny days to not give in to the temptation, just keep moving because you can see everything, kind of be patient, glass it really well, and look for those shoots and look for those things. Snow patches are great for deer too.
Yeah, I could. Um, the week before the season opened, I climbed a mountain and just scouted around, and it was a really hot, sunny day, and I was looking from my mountain across down to another mountain, and in the snow patches, I could see deer laying in the snow patches midday. So that's where they're staying. That's where they're cool, and you just got to know there's a good thermal breeze going up the hillside there, keeping them out of the bugs.
Yeah. So what about on those foggy days? Some people say stay put. It's not worth it going in the fog because if you're walking around, you might be bumping something. Like you said, they're moving around a lot more. They feel like they might be. Obviously, it's nice and cool, but they might be moving under the protection of the fog. So, are you a stay put, wait for windows, or do you move a little bit? Do you regulate your movement? How do you handle fog?
Yeah. It's I think for me because I really hunt a couple mountains a lot and know them really well. I will do stuff that I wouldn't recommend on other mountains. I know exactly where some of the deer trails are, and so I would maybe sit on a spot and wait and wait and wait. But if I was just on a random mountain and I didn't know where the deer were going to be, I would probably move more than sit.
Mm-hmm.
But I also have a couple of other areas that I like to hunt in that are kind of lower elevation and maybe might be below the fog, and just try to change my location to avoid that bad visibility.
Yeah.
So there's a couple like low bowls and slides where you can, the deer will traverse back and forth across those areas, and you can basically be in that little area and see across, but hopefully not be up high enough where you're in the fog or in the clouds.
Yeah. Yeah, that can be a really dangerous thing for people who don't know Southeast Alaska terrain, or even if you are a local. Like I've been up on mountains that I know and know pretty well, but the fog gets so thick or soupy, and like, well, I'm just going to look over here real quick, and all of a sudden you're, 45 degrees off, and you're like, whoa, wait a second here, where exactly am I? And that's how you can get in trouble. You go off the wrong side or something. So it's really good to know the mountain. But
Yeah.
even then, just kind of understand and know, and your GPS, you can be looking at that. You can be looking at your OnX, and that can be off too because of the density of the fog. So it doesn't take a lot to all of a sudden get disoriented. And so at that point in time, it's good to kind of cut the losses and think, all right, well, I need to just hunker down here till I see something and not make this situation worse.
Yeah, definitely. I've if there's bad visibility, or if I'm going to come back through a place in the dark, or anytime that I'm in an area where I'm not familiar with, I leave a little track line on my um, phone or whatever little app I'm using, and will use that, as a safety net to be able to navigate back to exactly where I've been.
Mm-hmm.
And I know if I've come this way, it's safe to go. I'm not going to get cliffed out. I'm not going to get stuck, or I'm not going to go down something that's too steep and potentially dangerous.
Yeah.
So
How does your pack vary from you look at the weather, next couple of days going to be sunny, should be hot, maybe foggy, versus it's going to be rainy? How does that impact your packing?
I, I think we talked about this the last time. I basically run the same thing, rain or shine, and it's just a shell layer. I wear Kuyu, Chugach, NX, just a shell, and maybe leggings or shorts underneath. And if it's going to be rainy and cold, maybe I'll just, not bring shorts, but just wear a little thicker pair of leggings. And when it's hot and sunny, I just vent them and let them go wide open. And they're basically shorts at that point. And then if it's going to be wet and rainy, climb them up and keep the gaiters on the whole time too.
You have a tarp?
No, I don't. So I have used one before. My buddy Nathan that I've hunted with in Juneau, he lives in Juneau and he's come over here to hunt and I've hunted with him there and we've hunted a few other places in the state together, but he's got a nice little tarp that he's brought along on a few different places and that's pretty handy for what if it's going to be a long extended like sit and stay for sure. But for what I've done, we just either get up, hope the clouds burn off real quick, and if they don't, do a quick lap and then head back down. I haven't really stayed up in the top like all day when it's been bad weather.
Yeah, it's been tough. I try to time it, and some of the people that come up and do the 7 to 10 dayers, you're kind of stuck with the weather, and that's all that you can do. But a lot of the hunts that we do down here are, a day or two. You check the weather. It's the weekend, or whatever time that you have. A lot of times it's 24 to 36 hours. You just take what you can get. Sometimes if it's good, the weather is going to be marginal. You just plan on being wet the entire time. Just going to keep moving. I'm going to be wet. Hopefully I get a shot, and that's it. And if I don't, coming back down the mountain. So it's just a continual, miserable, soaking wet type thing. Maybe you stop and we had to set up the tarp and boiled some water to get warm, just because it was so thick and soupy down here on the opener. But shoot, that's just kind of what you plan on down here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've usually built in enough days into August off where I can, I had a couple days off and it was just stormy and rained like 4 inches. And it's like, well, I'm not going hunting today. I've got other things I can do. But like in November, I've had friends come and, they're here for 4 days. We're going to hunt all 4 days. If it's bad weather, we're just going to wader up or wear full Grundens and just deal with it. And on those days, I do bring, a full change of clothes basically in a dry bag in my backpack. And if I get actually wet or I'm cold, stop, completely change into dry stuff and start, restart. And at that point, you're kind of coming home anyway.
Yeah.
But at least you'll be comfortable for the way back and not be getting colder and colder and wetter and wetter.
Yeah, there's that understanding that you're on borrowed time that happens during rut and even during August and Alpine when you're soaked. And maybe this is you've soaked the extra clothing that you brought, and it's either going to happen or it's not, but it's got to happen either way pretty quick because there's no longevity to this hunt. It's nearing its end because of the weather.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think knowing when to pull the plug is a good, a good sign of maturity too as a hunter. Just know when it's not worth pushing it.
Yeah, I think especially in the world now, people want to advocate or they want to tell the world how they kept hammering or how they were, ignored. Rogan talks about his inner bitch or whatever, and I think there's definitely something to be said for being smart and preserving because ultimately the number one goal is to come home safe. Sometimes that, and I fight this a lot because I'm pretty conservative. I'm not a huge risk taker. So I kind of battle with that. Okay, am I just wussing out? Am I listening to that voice that's making me a little bit more timid, or am I being smart? Because sometimes I can convince myself that this easier route, this different mountain, this whatever is the right choice when really that could just be the easier choice. And so I kind of have that conflict in my brain and think, is this just me looking for an easy way out? And I think, no, this actually is smarter to not hike up to this. This happened to me the last time I was out. Rather than go all the way across the ridge to where I'd seen a buck before, I didn't go as high on the solo hunt as I had on the opener with my buddy Danny and my wife because the habitat where we camped was really, really good. And I thought, hey, we may have camped in their kitchen. We may have camped a little bit too close. So if I don't hike all the way to that spot, to that saddle, if I stay back a little bit, I might see something that's going to be right in that area. And then I thought, okay, is this just because you don't want to carry camp on this solo hunt very far? I mean, is this a bad thing actually? Am I convincing myself? that less work is actually better. It ended up being the right call because right the evening came out and I started seeing does, and I looked over and maybe 20 yards up from where we'd camped in the timber in the saddle was this nice buck that was feeding. And I thought, man, this is perfect. I blew the shot because I had dropped my rifle on its scope on the road before I left. And I thought,
Oh,
oh man, but scopes are a lot more resilient, right? You take it through
yeah,
brush, you drop it. Scopes are really resilient. So I took the shot from, I think it was 270, missed horribly. And I thought, ooh, maybe it was the rest. Shot again, missed. Clean misses, went
uh,
over there, found it. And then I went to the range afterwards, and I was a good 12 inches off at 100 yards.
yeah,
So I felt good that I had actually, the plan was good. It was just the rifle scope was off. But yeah, it's you battle that temptation to, how can I get a bargain buck? It'd be nice to have a bargain buck. If I don't have to work real hard and still get the result, that'd be awesome. But most of the time, it's good to responsibly push instead.
After years of fine print contracts and getting ripped off by big wireless providers, if we've learned anything, it's that there's always a catch. So when I first heard that Mint Mobile offers premium wireless starting at just $15 a month, I thought, what's the catch? But after talking to them and using their service, it all made sense. There isn't one. Mint Mobile's secret sauce is that they're the first company to sell wireless service online only. They cut out the cost of retail stores and pass those sweet savings directly to you. For anyone who hates their phone bill, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. I was hesitant about having to get a new phone and a new phone number, but with Mint, you can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone and your same phone number along with all of your existing contacts. Mint Mobile gives you the best rate whether you're buying for one or for a family, and at Mint, families start at 2 lines. All plans come with unlimited talk and text plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service starting at just $15 a month. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and to get the plans shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/waypoint. That is mintmobile.com/waypoint. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/waypoint.
yeah. I went up another mountain on the 18th in the afternoon and climbed a pretty significant hike up, and it took about 3 hours to clear the timber and get into the alpine. And right when we got up, there was a nice 2-point standing right there, maybe 180 yards. And I was like, ooh, that's in the right spot at the right time, or it's at the right spot anyways. But the timing was getting, so by the time, if we would have shot that buck there, by the time we got over to it, gutted it, boned it out, hung it up, it would be dark. And I knew that I know that little area, there's no flat spots, no camping spots, and no water in that whole area. And I know that, 30 minutes down this little hill there, along this ridge and down into a little gully, there's a perfectly flat spot and a nice little pond. And the ideal camping spot is like, we can't shoot that deer. It's like, nope, not right now. Maybe tomorrow on the way out, but not right now.
Yeah.
But it ended up being a good call too, because a little bit further away there was a lot easier deer to deal with.
Yeah, that's always the temptation. You go up there and you're so excited, and there's one it's like a marginal buck, and you're not a trophy hunter, but there could be different opportunities, different situations. Maybe you get an awesome bodied deer with bigger antlers in a better spot, so it can pay off to be patient. But yeah, that's that always happens too.
Yeah. So that next morning, plays right into that too, is the next morning we got up and went further down the ridge, and first thing in the morning I could see 4 mature bucks, 3 of which were really nice bucks. And okay, I know where that one's at. I know where that one's at. We know where he's at. We're going to lose sight of him while we dip down, and we'll come right up, and then we'll be closer. Then we can see where they've repositioned. And we got up there, saw two of the nice ones, got a little closer, and then it was the small 2-point was standing there looking right at us, like basically a wide forky with little eye guards. And I was like, well, just shoot that one. It's right here. It's close. It's standing still. That if we go any closer, that one that's standing right there is going to bust everything else, and we might not get a shot at anything. And so the my hunting partner, she shot it and dropped it right away. And I just peeked over the next corner, and sure enough, that the big 2-point was right there, and he was oblivious and feeding. But if we would have pushed it and tried to go farther, the smaller buck was probably going to blow that whole area out if he ran away through there. So I want to feel like I made the right call. maybe I just got lucky or whatever, but it all worked out.
Yeah. That's all you can do.
Yep.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your upcoming hunt? You're taking a pause from deer. Tell me about the upcoming hunt you got.
Yeah, I blocked off a big chunk of time, and I'm going to do 2 6-day sheep hunts back to back up in the interior. So taking the ferry out of here tomorrow and hopping the next ferry on Friday up to Haines and start driving after that. And my buddy Nathan's going to go with me on those. He went with me to Edelin Island, and we did a bow hunt for moose last year in Fairbanks, and he's kind of been my big hunting partner lately. So we're going to go take a shot at sheep.
So it's 2 6-day hunts. Is one for you, one for him, or how does that break down?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to figure that out on the drive up. I mean, I've been following a lot of the sheep management report stuff, and looking at sheep numbers and harvest numbers, and talking to some guides and people that I know that sheep hunt, and they've all been saying the same sad story of less and less and less sheep. So this, I don't want to say, oh, well, we'll just get 2 sheep and call it good, or like Nathan could get his sheep first and then I'll get a sheep or whatever. But I think we're going to be lucky if we see a few rams, and maybe hopefully one of them will be legal, and we might play rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, that's I don't want to say indifferent to sheep, but in the last few years my interest in them has grown so much. And not like as a trophy animal sort of thing, or that my hunting resume wouldn't be complete without it, but just that the terrain has gotten into me. And after going up north to do some caribou hunting, just getting into those shale mountains, it's so different than down here. Down here you have some monolithic cliffs and you have vegetation, but just that terrain is so appealing and so desolate and so extreme that an opportunity to have a hunt up there is so appealing, for lack of a better word. It's so appealing. So I've been reading a lot more about it and following those numbers a lot more. I think sometimes people can get caught up in their region, and I was really caught up in what I could do here in Southeast Alaska, and there's a lot of opportunities, and I mean plenty of opportunities to keep you busy. And there are people who have hunted Southeast Alaska and never hunted anywhere else, because you got black bear and you got brown bear and you got mountain goat and you got deer, and that's enough to satisfy someone for an entire lifetime. But if you do start getting curious about what there is up north, then man, there's a lot of material out there, and all of a sudden you just have to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a challenge for Southeast people from Southeast Alaska to go do kind of more DIY sheep hunts. You got to deal with travel and travel logistics. Like for me, I'm not even going that far, and relatively speaking, but it's going to be basically 5 complete days of travel by the time I leave Hoona to the time where I start walking, or and back. So 2.5 days up, 2.5 days back. So I've got to budget at least 5 days of travel time into my hunt window just to be able to start hiking.
Yeah.
So Yeah.
Yeah, there's a huge cost. If you're down south, if you're a Wyoming resident and you want to go hunt elk in Colorado, you can, fuel up the truck and you can drive down there for an extended weekend or for 7 days or something like that. But up here, even in Southeast Alaska, it's expensive to get to Fairbanks. It's probably more expensive for us to get to Fairbanks than it is from someone who lives like in an airline hub where you can just go, maybe out of Seattle or, where they have a big airline and you're at a hub. It's expensive to get up there. So the costs are not all that different as far as the travel goes. Obviously, it's, what, $15,000 for a guide to do sheep. But yeah, it's cost prohibitive a lot of times for just the ordinary Alaska resident to do a lot of these hunts that people who are professional hunters or who are pretty wealthy, who have been saving for a long time. It's a little easier, I guess, for them.
Yeah. My round trip travel costs is going to be over $2,000. So
Yeah, that's
it's not cheap,
no.
but it does have that draw that is amazing scenery and a totally different ecosystem up there.
Hmm. So have you done your research primarily with like calling biologists, calling guides, people? Have you, gone to forums, books? Like what's been kind of the good way to get the information and make you feel good about your plan?
I have read the management reports where they go through their sheep surveys and aerial surveys for sheep throughout the years. So I've read every piece of literature that's been published by the state that's available. And then I've talked to some people that have hunted the area in the past, and I've talked to a guide that's hunted kind of an adjacent area, and that's about it though. It's, you have to take everything with a grain of salt with sheep, no matter where it's coming from, I think. But I would assume that the management reports, the numbers are the numbers.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is that they are not every year. So they don't, there's some gaps in time, but I'm kind of looking at long-term averages.
Yeah.
And just, the hunt that I did in 2020, I just threw a pin on the map and just went there. And I tried looking it up. I tried researching it. I tried talking to some people, and nobody knew anything about that, or they weren't willing to tell me.
Right.
And it worked out. I mean, we got really close to sheep, and we found sheep in the places I thought there were sheep. They weren't quite legal, but, and I knew that the area that I was going into at that time was just a very low density sheep area. This area that I'm going into has a much higher sheep density, but also has a kind of a smaller average size, if that makes any sense. So
yeah,
might be tough.
Sheep hunting is super unique in a couple things. If you get a tag for, let's say, a caribou, you can settle, I guess. You could be in an area that has trophy quality or trophy potential, but you can settle for a lesser bull as long as it's a bull. But having the full curl requirement, that's serious. It has to be that big. You have to scrutinize and make sure it's that big. There's no, well, I settled for a 3/4 curl just because, I'm not a trophy hunter and it was there. There is no settling. It has to be legal requirement. It has to be obviously it can be, bigger. It can score much better. But then also there's the scarcity that's starting to kind of happen. And it's not as easy as Southeast Alaska where you just pick them out and there's going to more than likely be bucks up there, and probably a nice buck depending on where it is. You might go to a range and you're not seeing much, or I know Tyler Friel and Frank were talking about, they went to a place where the estimated numbers, were very, very low, if not non-existent, but they just knew and trusted that there'd be sheep there, and they both got sheep. I don't know if that was this year, but a couple of years ago that happened. So that faith in sheep being there, and then needing it to be legal size, and then just there's a whole set of complications that are unique to sheep hunting that are kind of exciting, but also kind of stressful. I think you can second guess yourself a lot in sheep hunting in ways that you might not be able to second guess yourself in other hunts.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely can be stressful. I've been fortunate to go on, I've just been on a couple sheep hunts before, but I went on one sheep hunt with my uncle in 2015, 14 or 15, and immediately we saw a band of rams, and there was one in there. And from a long ways away, I'd never seen a Dall sheep ram before, and I was like, that is a legal full curl ram, no doubt about it. And you pull up the scope on it, and oh yeah, okay. So if you see an absolute whopper, then that's great.
Yeah.
But man, I have had good looks at big rams, so I at least know what that looks like. But man, those marginal rams are real close to it, just the way that they're turning sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you get the perfect look, that will tell you, but not having that experience, I'm going to have to definitely wait for that perfect look at most of the sheep, I think.
Yeah. Is it kind of an odd comfort knowing that it's out of your hands when it comes to that? Because you can't shoot a sub-legal ram. And if it's marginal, like, no, I can't shoot that. I'm not even tempted because it's not. And so it takes the decision out of your hands. Is there some weird comfort in that?
Maybe. I mean, in 2020, when I was in the Brooks, we got really close to several rams, and each one was clearly not full curl on one horn, but the other horn did come up super close to full curl, and I just wasn't getting that look. We had to just get closer, spend more time with them, and finally at like 50 yards, I got the looks that I needed, and then it was not full curl. And then I did have a good, sigh of relief. Like, okay, all right.
Yeah. I mean,
I did everything of the hunt worked out perfect. I did everything I could. It just was, the sheep wasn't big enough.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, maybe it's comforting, but at the time I was a little bummed, but
yeah. It seems like you wouldn't be able to be haunted in the same way if you pass on a marginal caribou on day one, or like a legal moose, but it's not mega, and you pass and then you don't end up shooting anything. You think, gosh, dang it, I came all this way. I should have shot that bull on day one, or I should have, I shouldn't have had standards or whatever it is. I should have shot that really nice 3-point with eye guards that I saw, but I was holding out for a bigger one. If it's not legal, it's not legal. Yeah, I chose the mountain. I went up there. Nothing legal. Gave her hell. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. And not knowing where we're going necessarily. I mean, I kind of know where we're going, but the only way to get around that, is to be in really good shape, be able to cover ground, and give yourself time to learn the area and see a lot of the area. Mm-hmm. So, there's guys that, do sheep hunts on a weekend and are successful routinely, but they know where they're going. They know what they're doing. They know the program.
Yeah.
The only way I can get around it is time.
Yeah. So how is that program going to change? We've talked about Southeast Alaska deer, and there's a lot of texture here, and you can hide behind some of these folds, and you can make stalks, and the deer can be out feeding, and then they go down in the timber. Sometimes you can find them in brush and in those chutes, whereas it seems like sheep are high in their safe bedding areas and kind of come out during the day to feed, but you're a lot more exposed. Stalks can be a lot more difficult. So how do the programs that you have run a lot in Southeast, how do they prepare you for a sheep hunt? And then how also is it going to be different?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think being much more patient for sheep is the way to go than for a deer. Because here you can kind of push it. They're not as wary. They're not as spooky. There's lots of other stuff moving around them usually, so they don't they might not even care if you're just walking around at 300 yards. They might see you, but they won't be, running over the hillside. But for sheep, I think patience is going to be key. And yeah, patience. And then the difference in the sheep hunt then would probably be like some sort of like whites, like Tyvek whites. I've heard those are kind of could be helpful. So we're gonna hopefully maybe we'll bring a pair or two of those with us too. If for some reason we're just stuck and we can't approach or we can't exit an area, that might save us.
What about like camping spots, wind and water? One of the things I've never been on a sheep hunt. I've hiked around in the Alaska range, and we've looked at some sheep when we were up there, but never been on a sheep hunt. So I start thinking about, man, where's the flat spot where I could have camp? Everyone talks about it, or sheep camp, having your tent blow up seems to be an often occurrence, and also not having those nice little high ponds where you can get water. So how does wind, how does camping spot, and how does water play in?
Yeah, the area that I'm anticipating hiking into doesn't have very much. It has maybe a little glacier input, so there might be a little water, but I'm not going to count on that. So I've got my 3-liter Camelback kind of, or whatever, it's a platypus, with a little hose tube. And then I've got 2-liter jugs and a 1-liter water bottle. So if I need to, we can go descend or find water somewhere and just pack a lot of water with us for, a couple of days. And then camping, I've, looked on Google Maps and Google Earth and just kind of try to find what looks like might be a little flat spot or a valley. And we've got individual shelters, so we don't need a big flat open spot to set up a big tent. We can individually just carve out or maybe even kick out a small spot to sleep in. Hopefully we'll find something nice, but with sheep, if you don't know where they are, it's hard to plan on. We're going to camp here, we're going to camp there, we're going to, we're just winging it, really.
Yeah. I got a buddy who's been on a couple sheep hunts. He lives in Fairbanks, so it's just like he's used to that different sort of hunting style. And he says one of the greatest assets you can have is just to be mobile. And if you do set up your one base camp, like he says, the base camp is more for like a moose hunt. Obviously, when you're floating, that's going to be a little different. But being able to be mobile is so important because you're going to be covering so many miles there and back, rather than be able to make a move right now and be able to camp if need be, rather than, oh man, are we going to be able to make a move on this animal? Camp is all the way back here. So being mobile is huge. What kind of tent do you have or shelter?
I've got a Seek Outside Silex, I think is what it's called. I just got it. I haven't used it on a big hunt yet, but it's just a kind of like a modified teepee. It uses 2 trekking poles, but it's not the long center ridge. The 2 poles kind of go right on either side of you around your waist area, and then so it's fairly small, but with just me in there and my gear, it's plenty big. And I have a stove jack with it, and then I've got my titanium stove. I think we'll be able to look at the weather and see if it's going to be wet. If it's going to be wet, maybe I'll bring that stove, but I will most likely just leave it and, just not bring it. But then Nathan just has a tarp for his, it's like a 5 or 6 sided tarp that he can kind of pitch in a couple different orientations.
You can do a stove with that 1-person Seek Outside tent?
Yeah. So I set it up, and I had to get a different stovepipe because I had the teepee, the Red Cliff, which is a 4-person teepee, and the stovepipe is much taller. So I got a new stovepipe, and when I did the burn in on the stovepipe, it was kind of a rainy, misty day, and that little shelter got pretty warm pretty quick. So I think if I were to string some little strings back and forth from my trekking poles and hang stuff on it, I think I could dry out and warm up pretty quickly if you can find dry firewood to burn. That's always the thing.
Wow. Yeah, that's a whole. When I think of those seek outside tents, I got a buddy of mine has. Is it the Red Cliff? I think maybe. Um, and that thing is so awesome, and it's great. Like spring bear when it's still kind of cool in the evenings, but just be able to dry out in those days where it's pretty dark for a long time. But man,
Yeah.
so a really small, lightweight one to be able to put a little stove in there and just have your little. Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah, it smushes down to the size of, maybe a, I don't know, two fist size kind of. It's really small once you squish it all down and doesn't weigh too much. So I'll put it through the ringer on this hunt and see how it does. And like I mentioned, we're going to do like basically a 6-day hunt on one side and then be able to move to another area, and we'll have kind of a resupply of gear and resupply of food back where we're going to start hiking. And I'll probably leave the stove there, and by the time we get back down to that spot at the end of that hunt, we'll probably need to regroup anyway. So having that stove there to be able to completely dry out, reset, maybe even take a weather day there, without having to back out of the area completely will be pretty nice.
Yeah, shoot, I've never heard of that, but it makes a lot of sense, especially if you're talking about a pretty light tent. It's not like you're trying to go over there with some huge thing that there's always that temptation. We talk about being hardcore or not. There's the temptation, I think, if you have a nice warm tent, to just kind of stay there. But yeah, shoot, man, that sounds like the best of both worlds. You can be minimalist, you can absolutely get after it, but you can also maximize your time up there by being able to warm up, dry out if possible.
Yeah, and we're late August, the last week of August and the first week of September could be really nice, or could be starting to get pretty wintry up high, especially. So, we kind of got to pack for whatever. And it's not like the 1-day deer hunt where exactly what the weather's going to be for the next day. It's, you got to go and be prepared for whatever. And I think that stove and the hot tent combo can kind of, it might weigh a little more, but then you don't have to bring as much clothes to dry out or to change into, or, it don't have as much of a backup. That stove is your backup.
Yeah. Yeah, we're doing a fly out next month, and it's going to be mid-September, which, I mean, it could be nice. It's not going to be hot by any means, but, nice being sunny and cool. You can, have the puffy, have a rain jacket or an outer shell to keep the wind off. But could also be raining, 6 to 8 inches. That interior weather can swing so dramatically. Buddy of mine was out hunting a couple of years ago, and they got delayed on the fly out because there was 6 inches of snow, and then the rest of the hunt ended up being good. So that's, it's always the wild card. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, weather can make or break it for sure.
Mm-hmm. So what else you got about the hunt? What else are you thinking about, pondering, planning for, or things you want to share?
Oh, well, I don't want to talk too much about the sheep hunt just yet, but and I don't know if it works out, I might not talk about it hardly at all.
Oh yeah, that's
but I think I'm looking at right now, I've got a little whiteboard of just like huge lists of stuff that I have done, I need to do, I need to pack, I need to bring, stuff for the truck, stuff to wear, when I'm back in town, stuff to travel with. It's just a lot of stuff.
Yeah. When people do ask, obviously you've been on sheep hunts, you've hunted here in Southeast Alaska for deer. When people do reach out to you, how do you gauge how much you share? Because you want to be helpful, but you don't want to just tell everybody exactly where to go. You don't want to cork yourself. So how do you gauge being helpful versus providing too much detail?
Yeah, that I think that's a person by person. I kind of
Oh
gauge
yeah.
if they're going to go there, or if they're capable of going there, or maybe they are good friends with, or have a buddy that is a little more hardcore than them. I might be a little more vague
Hmm.
because that could be eventually a direct competition. Um, but for the most part, I'm not too shy about sharing spots because the main thing, like for example, northern Chichagof Island, there's a dozen, let's call it a dozen mountains that you could get to and hike around here. But and like you said, there's probably a nice buck on any of them, any given day of the season. But the real thing that you got to know is how to get up it.
Hmm.
Because there are some ways that if you just pick her out, that might be terrible, totally miserable. But if you pick the right way, it might be really nice.
Hmm.
And if you pick the exact right way, there might actually be a trail up it already.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm not going to give out is
Yeah.
where the trail's at, unless I take that person. And then it's kind of a unwritten rule that if someone takes you up a mountain and shows you the trail, that you're not going to go back there with
Yeah.
all your buddies later
Right.
and take advantage of that knowledge that was shared with you. But also no one owns the mountains, so
Yeah.
I don't get too bent out of shape. There's some younger guys now that are hunting the mountains that I would have liked to hunt earlier this season, but they know about the trails that I have up them, and they know kind of where to go, and they've just been going there.
Yeah.
Which is fine. There's other mountains.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing when people reach out who maybe even aren't even from around here and they ask about, how to hunt things. Most of the time I find myself giving it the generic information that you could find by Googling. It's just, the further away you are from roads, the better off. You're looking for this alpine area. You're looking for this, this, and it's all just the generic stuff that's out there. But I don't think it hurts to be friendly. And even though you're not giving any specifics, you're not giving any like really rich details, at least you're helping out a fellow hunter feel confident about their program. And there are some people I've had. One guy reached out and he said, "Hey, here's my plan." Kind of treated it like you would if you were to call a biologist and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about going to this mountain on this date for this species. Am I in the ballpark? Like, is there a chance I'm going to be successful?" So the guy said, "Hey, I'm flying into this lake. What do you think?" I can think, "Oh, okay. Well, that's definitely a lake. You're hitting some of the things you want to look at with regard to you're getting further away from town. You're getting into the alpine in this time of year, so you're checking all those good boxes. It's just going to be a matter of make sure you're safely ascending up there." Mornings and evenings are great, but also during the day, finding, like we said, those shoots. So I think when people reach out on those forums and say, "Hey, where's a good place to caribou hunt?" I think you're inviting a lot of ridicule, a lot of, stay out. So I think if people were going to want to reach out, they have something planned and say, "Hey, am I in the ballpark here?" But yeah, I don't think that being friendly should include blowing up spots and then there's also if you take a picture with a mountain in the background that someone can recognize, the person probably had to be there to recognize it. So you're not telling anybody anything that they don't already know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it can be dangerous because if you show like a really spectacular buck, then you're gonna be giving some attention to an area that might not have that sort of attention. But just a regular old buck on a mountain that can kind of be recognized by someone who's been there. I don't know if you should be necessarily, but it is a slippery slope,
Yeah, and I also am kind of fortunate that I can hunt through the season, so the vast majority of the pressure for deer around here happens the first weekend, and maybe a little in the second weekend, and by the third or fourth weekends is still great alpine. I mean, today would have been an awesome day to be up in the alpine, and I'm pretty sure no one was up there on this whole northern Chichagof Island. It's just it's midweek. There's cruise ships in, people are busy, and if you want to dedicate a little bit of time later in the season, it doesn't matter if people have already gone up all the mountains, as the deer have kind of refiltered and reshuffled, and there'll be more deer up there.
Yeah, I think we've done pretty well August 15th or so, kind of mid-month, for all the reasons that you just talked about. Things get reshuffled. You have the initial pressure, but you don't have everybody aiming for that first opening weekend. More people, I think, want to go opening weekend and let's do it here. But then after that, it ends up being, well, we'll take this weekend off, and it doesn't, coincide with anybody else's weekend. So a lot less traffic, things get reshuffled, and it's kind of nice too when you can look at hard-horned deer. I much prefer. I like hunting on the opener. I love being up there in early August. It's warm. The weather's usually pretty, relatively stable, at least for the area. But man, hard-horned bucks in late August, early September is awesome. And you get up there in those cooler evenings, and all the colors are starting to change in September. It's a really cool experience too.
Yeah, I think maybe one of the coolest hunts that I'd done, I think, was September 10th or 12th, I think. And yeah, everything was out of velvet. I was actually surprised the other day that I didn't see anything that was out of velvet. Everything still had velvet on the 18th. But a couple more hot sunny days, they could be dropping it right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's. I get a little panicked because I don't have a deer yet. We went out, wife and I got a mountain goat. We're going to record that podcast. So there can be a little bit of panic. So I have to kind of calm myself down and think, hey. You spent your opener with a good friend and your wife, and it was kind of chaotic because he'd never hunted before, and you had some chances, but the weather wasn't great. Then the weather got hot. But you're going to be fine. Like, there's still more time. You got this coming weekend. You got the 3-day weekend. I mean, it's not. You don't have to have that feeling of desperation like some people might have when they only have 7 days to come up here and do it, or otherwise they're eating the tag. There's still a lot of time. There's still alpine season, and then obviously you have rut. I much prefer alpine season, but there's still a long season. Just kind of calm down, run the program, and do it right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Patience.
Yep. So what else you got for a closer here?
I don't know. Man, it's good to be in good shape. That's for sure. Hiking the mountains this year, after I was done, I just went about the rest of the day and didn't feel like I needed to, crash out or take a nap or do anything else. And the next day, no soreness. And yeah, that's pretty nice. Definitely makes the alpine hunting a little more enjoyable when you don't have to recuperate for a day or two after.
Yeah, that's so nice. It's staying in shape year round. So all it is just kind of ramping up your fitness rather than starting again in June or something like that. I don't know how some of those guys can do it. Mentally, their fortitude is very high because they've done it before. So it's just a matter of getting their body to remember. But yeah, just being in shape going into it. That way you're at full throttle and you're not miserable. That's way better that way. I could always be in better shape, and that's always the thing. It's like, man, if I could be more comfortable with a 15, like if I could cruise, if I could go in with everything, just be able to cruise. But I'm like, man, my pack feels a little bit heavy. It's only 50 some pounds. Is obviously ready to prepare to pack out an entire deer too, but just being able to get up the mountain quicker, feel better. So when you drop camp, you're super fresh. I think there's always that I could be a little bit more in shape. I feel really good, but man, a little better would be just a little bit better.
Yeah. Real quick, have you weighed your packs like before you go up a mountain for like a day?
Yeah.
Overnight?
I never really did, but just for a frame of reference, I'm starting to see, hey, it might be a good idea to get a frame of reference of where I'm at. So usually between 40 and 50 pounds, kind of depends on if I'm, the spotting scope is obviously the big thing. Same thing with the tripod. There are times when I'm going as light and fast as possible. I got the tent, I got the food. It also depends on if I'm going up with my wife, because we'll split, like I'll take the tent stuff and she'll take the cooking stuff. And so that makes it a lot easier and lighter. But there are times where I don't take spotting scope, I don't take tripod. It's just binos because, you're going to be in an intimate sort of area. You don't really need that stuff. You're not sorting through. You're not counting points necessarily from a distance. You can do all that with binos. So I'm usually 42 to 50.
Okay. That's not that. That's yeah. That's on the high side for what I would have on a overnighter. But this last time I weighed it on the way down after I got back, because I was we're interested because I had the whole deer camping stuff and my stuff in my pack, and it was 70, right, just under 70 pounds. So, and then I weighed the meat out separately, and it was like boned out 40 pounds of meat. So, basically have distilled everything down to like 30 pounds.
Yeah.
Basically.
Do you include your rifle? I'm including rifle and I'm including water.
Oh, no. So that's no rifle. That's 6 pounds basically. And then that was including a little bit of water, what I had left in the backpack at the end of the day. But I had drank most of the water on the way down because I knew, all right, I'd probably drink about 1.5 liters on the hike down. So I started with 2 liters and I finished with not much. So yeah. You can always bring less and you can always bring more. That's for sure.
Yeah, I included the tarp just because it's been kind of rainy the days that I've been up there. So having the tarp in there has been nice. And then I include the water and then include the rifle. So it gets, and then bino harness, all that stuff. So it's like the whole everything. But yeah, I try to bring a little bit more food, and I try to kind of overpack a little bit on some of these hunts just so later on, if I have longer hunts, I'm more prepared. And I try to do that during some of the training stuff, just like bringing 3 days worth of food and bringing, every little thing that I can think of on my scouting trips in June. Sometimes obviously just go as light as fast as possible, just bringing a little bit of food for the day hike. But on some of those longer ones, let's get some miles in with what my pack is going to be, or maybe even a little bit more during the season. That way, if I'm going up with my kit for overnight, like I've done this before a couple of times, I've done heavier and I'm in really, really good shape. But yeah, it's always, if you have your pack as light as possible and then you haven't done it with water, or you haven't done it with, all your gear and your rifle, then all of a sudden it's like, oh man, those 10 extra pounds makes a big difference.
Yeah. So for Edelin Island, when I did that hunt, my pack going up the mountain started at 85.
Oh,
so, but that was, and I knew it was going to be miserable, but that was bringing, I had the sleeping shelter for 4 people, and I had the stove, and I had dry firewood coming up the mountain with us. So that was extreme. And then probably my sheep hunt, I had a whole bunch of extra crap that I won't need on this sheep hunt. So hopefully if I have my pack around 50 pounds for the sheep, that'll be fine. Yeah. There's guys that do it so much less, but they're trading creature comforts that I don't want to trade out for.
Yeah, I think there's my buddy Danny and I talked about this. He's in the fitness industry. He's a weightlifter. He runs a lot, and I mean he's in really, really good shape. And we talked about how it was kind of tough for him because it was a different type of hiking. Different, when you add the brush, mentally it just changes things. When your footing isn't good and you're using your stabilizers a whole lot more, so. He's in better shape than I am. He's stronger than I am, but I had the advantage because I'm used to going through that brush. I'm used to the slick footing, so my feet don't wear out as fast. But also the idea that you don't have to do this unbroken. Like there's nothing that says that you have to hike up with your pack because it's not going to be as heavy as it is when you have an animal. You don't have to get up all the way to the mountain without taking a water break or taking a second to sit down and just gather yourself or vent some heat. And I think that patience is an important thing too, because you could run yourself ragged, just trying to fly up the mountain, and then coming down with an animal too. Like it's good to take breaks. Take a break. Take an extra second to just, oh man, got it done. Take your breath. It's not a race to get back there so you can go have a burger in town or do whatever. And that's not a weakness. That's not, again, going back to that whole internal dialogue. Am I being mentally weak if I need to take a break? No, man, that's part of the enjoyment, especially if you're out with people, taking a break, having some water, chatting it up a little bit, keeping spirits high and enjoying the experience.
Yeah. And, if you haul down and hustle down and are completely whooped at the end of it, you're toast for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
So if you just go slow, take your time, take some rests, take a couple breaks, stretch, maybe take your boots off and, stretch your toes. And then when you get down to the bottom, you can still, it'll take you longer to get to the bottom, but you're still functional the rest of the day. You're not completely wiped out.
Yeah.
That's been my philosophy, is go a little slower on the way up, go a little slower on the way down, and be able to be a better hunter when you're up at the top because you're not as exhausted, and then be able to, deal with everything and regroup for whatever you got planned next.
Yeah.
At the bottom, and not have to be just like, comatose for a day.
Yeah. It's the important thing of going in prepared too, is your body's more resilient, and you can take a 5-minute break, but you're so much more refreshed than, if you haven't been training at all and you take a 5-minute break, but you're not at all refreshed. Like your heart is still just bumping out of your chest. So you get your heart rate down, you're nice and ready to go. You're replenished. You have a little bit of food, and you're back to high performing.
Yeah. I've also hiked with people that are not as in shape or not as fast of hikers as I am. So I've been going basically at their maximum pace, which is, and pushing them because we're trying to get up the mountain before it gets too hot. Or, you can see that big buck and it's moving towards that ridge. It's going to feed over and disappear. We got to hustle up to it. But, so I've been going as fast as they could go, but it's not, for me, it's not pushing it as hard. So, just kind of understanding that everyone's different too is a good thing, because, on the way down this last mountain, I wasn't pushing it hard at all. I hardly broke a sweat, even carrying everything down the mountain, because I was going at a very good pace that the other person could maintain the entire time too, without bonking,
Yeah. Yeah. You don't have to hunt with the carbon copy of yourself, but someone who's at least comparable or complementary. When my wife and I hunt, like we get up there, she can, carry, when she was carrying her portion of the goat out, it was 60 some pounds coming down the mountain. We took some breaks, but yeah, I don't feel that my wife is tagging along on a hunt whatsoever. She's capable enough. We can go anywhere. Very similar and, get after itness, which is really cool. And then same thing with the other guys that people I hunt with. It's nice to have that. You don't have to be the exact same. I got a buddy who can go super fast and he could just destroy me if possible, but we have similar hunting styles. And so I'm not holding him back by not wanting to run around the mountains. He's like, I got to calm down. I got to be patient here. So that's an important thing to have. Otherwise you end up, with this, conflict that I want to go do this and we're missing out because of this, and that can make the hunt less enjoyable.
Yeah, I think that's, another learned hunting skill is learning about how to hunt with other people that are not the same as you. Yeah. So just patience, time, patience.
That's the key, man. Patience. Yeah. Well, thanks for being on here, man. Always good to talk to you. I know we spent a lot of time chatting on the old socials, so it's good to chat and catch up. And excited to hear whatever you're willing to divulge after the sheep hunt. Best of luck to you, and have a good time.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Talk to you again, hopefully soon.
Yep. Take care.